So I've been thinking. I don't know why I've been thinking about it, but thinking about failure, and it's such a negative word, right? We're all so afraid of failing, but the reality is like we've all failed hundreds or thousands of times in our life, right? You may fail at something probably every single day, and yet we're running from it. We've experienced it, we've lived it, we've done it, and yet it still holds this fear over us. But the truth is, I've said before that you've overcome every obstacle that you've ever faced. Well, you've also overcome every failure that you've ever experienced. And I think so many times, like the fear of failure is greater than the sting of failure itself, right? That just fearing it is greater than actually failing in terms of what we actually experience, because you fail and then you get back up. Right. And you just keep going. You keep moving forward. It's never, there's a famous quote, like failure is not final. Right. It's you get up and you keep going. And, I cannot count the amount of times I failed in life. I was just talking about, when I first got into business, I made a business decision that cost us probably $1 million. That was a massive failure, not a business decision. I made an error in operating one day. Not a character flaw, just unorganized, didn't delegate well, didn't take ownership or enough responsibility, and it cost us a significant amount of money. Well, I still kept my job, right? That failure didn't define me. It wasn't the end. It didn't take me out. It was a bump in the road, and it was a significant bump. Like, it was a bad deal. But then I went and started a business and failed miserably. Right? I worked in the healthcare world for a long time, left that world, started my own healthcare recruiting company, which is the business that I'd been in, failed miserably. Like, made $0, failed. And I was so terrified of failing, because what I was really terrified of, I think what all of us are terrified of, and this is why the sting of thinking about failure is worse than the sting of failure itself, because we're not worried about failure. We're worried about what someone will think about us if we fail, right? Because we fail all the time and it never really hurts us that bad. We know we can grow from it. We're really worried about what everybody else thinks of us. What are they going to think about me if I fail? So when I was trying to build that business and failing every day, I was stressed, I was anxious, I was depressed, I was losing weight, and I'm not large to begin with. And it wasn't so much about the business failing, it was about being seen as a failure. And at some point I had to get to this place and say, well, that business, I shut it down, it failed, started a new one. Don't know why. Didn't make any sense. Had a new idea for business, which I have about every week. My wife, for some reason, was on board. She's like, sure, let's go for it. Well, that one took a year. So 2 straight years of failing, 2 straight years of being consumed with what people were thinking of me as a failure. But at some point I had to get to a place where I say, you know what, if I fail, if this doesn't work, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It's just this idea didn't work. Maybe it was the wrong time. Maybe I wasn't the right person. Whatever it may be, it doesn't mean it's not my identity, right? So we have to redefine failure and just see it as part of the process, not part of our identity, right? It's a result of a set of actions, a set of circumstances, sometimes within your control, sometimes outside of your control. But businesses fail. Doesn't mean you are a failure. Ideas may fail. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. So we have to get out of our head and stop wrapping our identity up in the success or failure of whatever it is that we're doing. As soon as I got to that place, say, you know what? I have to be okay with this failing. Doesn't mean I wanted failure, right? But as soon as I was like, you know what? If this doesn't work, I'll find something else. I gave it my best, but it doesn't define who I am. All of a sudden, that gave me the freedom to actually operate in the way that I should have operated. All of a sudden, business started to grow, because that fear of failure led to stress. It led to trying to oversell. It led to being overly pushy. It led to doing things that I wouldn't normally do. When I could remove that failure piece from my identity, then I could operate in freedom. But I also had to redefine failure to see, like, it's just part of the process. Like, if you're not failing, it means you're not trying anything new. If you're not failing, it means you're not doing anything to get better. If you're not failing, it means you're just staying where you are. You've gotten complacent. You've embraced average. It's like, it's hard to fail when you're not doing anything new, right? There's a story. So Sarah Blakely is the CEO of Spanx, and her dad, she told a great story in an interview I saw a couple of years ago that has stuck with me. She said her dad, every day when he would pick her up from school, would say, hey, what'd you fail at today? That was a question he asked her. What did you fail at today? And the point was to remove the stigma of failure from her brain. Say, no, I want you trying new things. If you failed, that means you tried something new. And if you tried something new, that means you're getting stronger, you're getting more resilient, you're getting more courage. And that's how you accomplish great things, whether it's becoming a better leader, whether it's mastering a certain craft, whether it's building a better team, writing a book, starting a business, whatever it is. It's like, you're going to fail all the time. And I'm trying to get my kids to understand this, right? In sports, in school, in life, like, you're going to fail all the time. It's perfectly okay. That's because you're trying new things. It means you're trying to get better. It means you're not settling. So we have to stop looking at failure as this negative thing and look at it like, no, this is a necessary ingredient for growth. You don't grow unless you do new things. You don't fail unless you do new things. So I think we just have to really have to redefine failure and take the stigma away from it. Realize, number one, it's not our identity, right? You can fear failing, but don't worry about what people think about you if you fail, because nobody's thinking about you. I don't want to burst your bubble. People aren't worried about whether or not you fail at the thing that you're doing. They're worried about themselves, right? They're not focused on you and your efforts and your projects and your ideas. They're just focused on them. So if those two businesses had both failed, nobody in my world would be thinking about it except for me, because they're all chasing their own things. They're all worried about their own problems. It's just you, right? You're the only one afraid of it. Nobody's going to label you a failure. So you need to stop labeling yourself as a failure. So stop wrapping your identity up in whether or not something works or doesn't, right? You have to know who you are. You have to be secure in who you are, and then realize that failing is just part of the process, that it's not really failing, it's just growing, right? Failure is such a strong word. It has such a heavy weight to it. Like, oh, I failed. No, you learned. You tried and you learned, right? Wouldn't we want to try and learn? Isn't that how we grow? So if we know that, like, if you have a conversation with someone, if I'm sitting down with someone, walking them through, they would agree with all those things. Oh, of course. Right? In order for me to do this new thing, I've got to try it first. I've got to learn how to do it, which means you're going to mess up. Right? If it's new for you, you're not supposed to be good at it. Right? If it's a stretch for you, you're not supposed to be good at it. You're supposed to fall down. You're supposed to trip. You're supposed to stumble. You're supposed to mess up. And then you get back up and you're better the next time. And as you keep stretching, as you keep growing, you stumble and fall and trip and fail again. And you get up and you keep going. And so I think we just have to redefine and rethink about how we view failure, right? It's not this big thing, that this cloud that's weighing over us, that's going to define us and shape us for the rest of our life. It's just part of the process. So I think when you take that fear out of it, you take the sting out of it. Well, then it becomes, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Right? But unless we address it, it just becomes this big monster that holds us back from getting better. It's like, no, it's just part of the process. It's no big deal. You are going to fail, and then you're going to keep moving forward. And then you're going to fail again, and you're going to keep moving forward. So I think for us today, like, what are you afraid of? Where are you afraid of failing? What's holding you back because you're afraid that you're not going to do it right, that you're not going to do it perfectly, that it's not going to work out exactly as you wanted it to work out? What are you holding back from because you're worried about what people will think of you if it doesn't work out? Maybe you've been telling people about this new business that you want to start, but you're actually not going to start it. It's like, what if you fail? And you've talked about it so much that you can't fail at it now, because what are they going to think about you? It doesn't matter, right? And that's when you have to go back to the vision, right? The vision has to be bigger than your fear of failing, right? Anything that's worth pursuing is worth failing at. Right? If it's a vision that's big enough, that's going to require all of your energy, all your time, all of your investment, if it's a vision that's going to require you to show up and bring your best, it's worth failing at. That's the only way you're ever going to accomplish it, is if you lean into it. So for us today, like, where are you afraid of failing, and how is that holding you back? Right? To always be thinking, like, what reality is that creating for you? Probably not the reality that you want, because you're not operating in freedom. Where there is a fear of failure, there is no freedom, and you can't unlock your potential. You can't become who you are meant to be unless you're showing up secure, humble, confidence. That's what freedom looks like. Not afraid of failing, not feeling the need to prove yourself to people, not afraid of what other people are going to think of you. Just operating in freedom, saying, this is the direction I'm going. I may trip and stumble and fall and fail, but I'm going to keep moving that direction, because I know that those failures are just getting me closer. right? Where have you quit in life because you had a failure and you thought that failure was final? No, it's just part of the process. And you missed that breakthrough. You missed that achievement. You missed that moment because you gave up at one early failure, right? I cannot count the amount of times that I failed in life, in business, in relationships, but you just keep going. You just keep going, right? It's never final. It's just part of the process of growth. Tracy, any questions? Any thoughts on that? Make sense? Any disagreements?
No, it does make sense. I just finished reading last week Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. Yeah. So I was looking while you were talking to us, I was looking at this quote that I thought was impactful. He says, "Fear of failure, I thought, will never be our downfall as a company. Not that any of us thought we wouldn't fail. In fact, we had every expectation that we would. But when we did fail, we had faith that we'd do it fast, learn from it, and be better for it."
That's right. That's it.
Just knowing it's part of life, expect it, and then learn from it. Love that.
And everybody who's created anything significant has failed. Right. Again, we always see the success, whether it's in sports or in business or in art or whatever. Oh man, that person's so successful. Yeah, they failed a million times. Right. Like they had so many failures, and I love it. You fail fast, and you learn and you get better. I was like, don't dwell on the failure. Right. Again, it's not an identity. It's like, okay, why did this happen? What can I learn from it? What am I going to do better next time? And again, I think we teach this to kids. We just tend to forget these things as adults.
True. Yeah, and I think I probably have the most respect for people who don't stay there in the failure, but they're okay to admit, hey, man, this happened, which I loved about that book, because Phil Knight definitely in that book talks about the times that he failed. He gives a lot of accolades to his team that had great ideas. He'll a lot of times say, here's what I didn't know, and they taught me or whatever, and I really love that about him.
Yeah. Look at Nike today, right? It's a I mean, to say it's a monster is pretty lightly, but like, I mean, countless failures.
Sure.
And again, it's just, we have to just take the fear out of it. Failure is really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, true. Well, we have a couple of questions, comments coming in. Jessica says, people say my ideas are too big, and that's why I seem to fail often. I'm a big picture person. Any suggestions on how to scale down so I have a better chance of success?
It's a great question. Been there. And I think, maybe it's the bigger the ideas, the bigger the failures, but also the bigger the successes, right? But I just think it's what I've had to learn as a big picture person is, have these big dreams. Those are good, right? That's who you are, but break it down into smaller pieces. What do I need to do today to move forward? Because you're not going to achieve the dream today. You're not going to achieve the vision today. And I think that pressure can lead us to failure, because we try to shortcut the system, shortcut the process. It's like, no, just what's the natural next thing to do, right? We've used the change equation before. It's like, you have the vision. What's the natural next thing, right? That gets you closer. And then, because I think what you really need in terms of pursuing vision is you need momentum and you need confidence. And so you stack these little wins on each other that get you closer to the big vision, right? Small wins today lead to big wins tomorrow. So you achieve that big vision with a bunch of little visions that move you forward along the way. And usually having people around you who help with those, right? If you're not naturally a detailed person, in the moment task type person, get those people around you who can, hey, here's where I want to go. How do you think I can get there? Can you help me get there, right? And let those people rest on their strengths to help you.
Absolutely. I was thinking of that as well, just that different personality types. She's obviously a big picture future thinker, and she might need a guardian or a nurturer around her just to help with the daily task. Or so if you all don't know what we're talking about the 5 voices, which will change your world if you start to learn about your own personality, your own tendencies, and then those around you. So go to giant.tv/culture wins, and you can take a free assessment there and see about your own personality and then those around you as well. It's a great idea. Then Dwayne has another question. He says, I've tried 3 times to go out on my own as a consultant and have not been able to feed my family doing this. How many times do I try before I realize I should change direction?
Ooh, that's another great question. One, my tendency as a connector is like, keep going, you'll make it, you'll be amazing. There is wisdom in scaling back. There's wisdom in changing course. That's not failing. It's just saying, you know what? It's not the right time, or maybe I'm not the right person. or don't have what it takes for this area. That's okay. It doesn't make, redirecting doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough to make an impact. It's not good enough to have success. You may have been on the wrong path. And there's no use in continually like forcing the path when it's the wrong path, right? That's just selfish, right? Realize like, you know what, it's just wrong. I don't feel it. And so I think it's a couple of things. One is try to learn from why have you failed? Has it been your own skill set? Has it been certain gaps you need to fill in? Maybe you weren't clear on the messaging. Maybe you didn't have as much influence as you thought you had. Building a consulting business is a lot about influence. So maybe we look in the mirror, like, am I not who I thought? Do I not have quite the reputation or credibility that maybe I thought I had? But I think too is also having kind of a board of directors, mentors that you can go to, say, hey, this is not working. What am I missing? What would you guys do if you were in my situation? Because we can be, as much as we'll say like you should be your best coach, there are times that we just need the wisdom of other people who may have gone before us, who are willing to speak the truth to us, who can see blind spots that maybe we're not able to see in the moment, and to trust them and listen to them. I mean, I've had people in my life where like, hey, I think I should do this. No, Kevin, you shouldn't. Okay, I don't see what you see, but I trust you enough that you see that. And sometimes they're wrong. That life is a guessing game half the time. But you can always. It's never too late to change course. Right? You can always make a decision to change course. And so I think having people in your life who can speak truth, say, you know what, you're awesome, but this may not be the right path for you. I never really thought it was the right path for you, but you didn't ask my opinion. I think you should be over in this lane. I think this is where you come the most alive and help other people do the same thing, that this is where you can have the most impact. So I just think doing an honest assessment with yourself and then having people speak truth into your life. I had a mentor once. He said, you have to be willing to give a business 5 years. If you're not willing to fail for 5 years, then you don't really care about it. I think just with the internet and technology, this was probably 10, 11 years ago. I think that's probably moved back to probably 3 years, just because it can be a little bit easier to kind of build some things. So I think if you're not willing to fail, to give something 3 years of your life, then try something else. If after 3 years, it's still not working, like there's no momentum, then it's probably time to try something else. It's kind of a general rule, but I just think it's okay to change course, right? Again, that's not failure. Exactly. You tried. And my guess is the things that you've learned in that season are actually preparing you for something else. Like maybe you're not supposed to be a consultant. That's okay. But the things that you've learned trying to do that are preparing you to have an impact somewhere else. Those lessons will come to life somewhere else. So none of that is for naught, right? It's like there are reasons for all of it. I fully believe that. I mean, the 2 years that I failed miserably are having I can trace things that I'm doing today and lessons that I'm implementing today from those failures. So even if you change course, don't view that as a waste of time. Like, man, I just wasted 2 years. No, you didn't. You learned about yourself. You learned about resilience. You developed grit. You developed more character. And all of those things will make you better down the road.
Love that. I'd say Giant is a good example of that. I mean, Giant's been around for 15 years, but we've changed courses, learned what our clients need, and adjusted according to the times and, entering the digital age. And so we've just had to pivot, and that's a good thing. So.
And there have been a lot of, to that point, there have been a lot of consultants in Giant who tried, it just hasn't worked. And there are a number of reasons for that, right? Again, that's true with Giant. That's true with any organization. It's just hard. I will say, for any of you listening, thinking about building a consulting business, it is really, really, really hard. The world makes it look sexy. It's really difficult. I mean, building a business is not an easy thing. And so it's not for everyone. And that's okay, right? And that's part of life. It's like trying to consistently find what lane am I supposed to be playing in, and you're going to make wrong decisions on which lane you're supposed to be playing in. That's okay, right? Again, those things are never final. I think that we get kind of this, I don't know what you call it. Maybe it's analysis paralysis, decision paralysis, where it's like, well, I made the decision, now I'm stuck here. No, you're not. You can always change course. You can always change course, and many times that will be the right thing to do, right? Because we get blinded. We buy into the sales pitch or whatever, whether it's consulting, whether it's working for a certain company who sold us on what they were about. And you get there like, man, this is not what I thought. Great. Why would you stay there? If you know it, you're not stuck. I bought a car, man, this car is not what I thought it was going to be. What? 5-year lease. Okay, well, sell it and get a different, you're never stuck with that decision. Or I should say rarely, maybe sometimes you are, but rarely are you actually stuck with that decision.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean for this to be a commercial, but I think this is an appropriate time to say, if you are out there and you're thinking, I really do want to try something new, I want to be a consultant, or as Giant has guides and consultants, we actually help with that. So you don't have to be this lonely island out there trying to start this brand new business and do all the marketing and all the social media and all that. That's what we help with. So if you're interested in joining Giant, partnering with us, you get to keep your own entity, your own business, but we can help empower you. We can help support you in that and give you resources and content. So just go to info.giantworldwide.com/apply. Every month we have a new cohort called Base Camp, and that's where people from all over the world are joining in and being connected with Giant so that we can help you as you start any new venture you may have as far as consulting or coaching. So love for you to join that. Well, this has been really great, as always. Thanks so much for your expertise and your knowledge, and you're always honest about your life and where you've been, your journey, and we always love that.